Have you seen this? The big budget Western comedy that really should have worked, but ended up being the last gasp of the big dumb 90s that missed its train.
Welcome to Have You Seen This?
The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten media.
All discussions will be spoiler heavy.
You have been warned.
This show would not be possible without the support of our patrons. If you would like to support our show, join us at patreon.com/haveyouseenthis. Patrons get the show a week early, and $5 supporters also get access to our Discord. Or you can tip us at our Ko-fi. Visit the link in the show notes. Well done.
All right, great.
I agree.
Cool.
West, Jim West, Desperado, millennial kids buy too much toast with avocado.
Nice. Hey, Jen, who's this episode brought to our listeners by?
It's not brought to you by avocado toast. It's brought to you by Zencastr.
Yeah?
Zencastr has...
Zencastr will edit out you flubbing your lines.
Yes, it's perfect. Zencastr has facilitated the production of this show for several episodes now. It's as easy as rolling off a fucking log. Check out the affiliate link in the description.
It's as easy as opening a browser window and logging into a website, which I know you do because you subscribe to the show on Patreon, and we thank you very much for that. But if you are interested in starting your own podcast, because like the Sex Pistols in Manchester, you know, only 30 people listen to this podcast, but all of them went on to form podcasts of their own. So go forth, subscribe to Zencastr, follow the affiliate link. We get a little change, and you're on your way.
Damn, Tim, that's really good.
Yeah, I'm good at this stuff.
That makes me want to start my own podcast.
You should, yes.
But in the meantime...
All right, yeah, well, let's get this one over with first.
Yeah, let's put a bullet in this old nag, shall we?
Speaking of bad ideas that cost way too much.
Yeah, one of the biggest blunders of the late 90s, I guess you could say.
Which is inexplicable. Do you want to take the lead on the backstory for this, or should I?
Oh, gosh. Well, there's just so much.
Right. Because we, as a podcast, should love this movie because of how much we love The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., another unsuccessful Weird West series. That one starring Bruce Campbell. The backstory of Wild Wild West was initially a Western-themed spy show. The spy genre is taking over Westerns in the 60s. We see that with...
the spy genre is taking over everything in the 60s because of James Bond.
Yes. You got The Man from U.N.C.L.E., you got Danger Man, followed by The Prisoner. A lot of great stuff, well regarded at the time.
The Avengers.
It was a popular genre. Why wouldn't you want to make a movie out of a popular genre? And you know what you should do? Maybe you should first start with a can't-miss property, remade for TV twice, helmed by Richard Donner, who is a giant of genre entertainment. He brought us a Superman movie, The Goonies, The Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt, and he worked on the original Wild Wild West series. Great. We're off to a great start. He can't be involved, but he taps Barry Sonnenfeld to direct this. What has Barry Sonnenfeld done? He had previously turned a popular 1964 TV series, The Addams Family, into a hit movie in 1991. I want to see him do that again. You know what else he's done? 2 years previously, a hit movie, Men in Black, starring Will Smith. Also of Independence Day.
Yeah, a fun genre buddy picture.
Yes.
That audiences loved. Why don't we take one of those stars? Because everyone loves him.
Yes.
He's a huge breakout.
He is
Will Smith.
Yeah, he has been producing popular, inoffensive music for a decade. He is a great, box office earner. He's charming and people love him. He just shows up and is his Will Smith self. You get Kenny Branagh, the guy from Hamlet. Kevin Kline, who's always funny. Salma Hayek, who is incredible to look at.
Hot.
Yeah. Will Smith even does the song for the movie. That is the song that reaches #1, nominated for a Grammy and wins a Razzie. How did this movie not work?
Well,
I asked.
let's talk about a guy named John Peters.
Yeah, you're going to fill in for Kevin Smith in this episode because he didn't return our calls.
Right.
Let's talk about the giant mechanical spider in the room.
Right. When we kicked around the topic for this, I went back and revisited that anecdote.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure all of our 5 or 6 listeners already know this story. But Kevin Smith, as you know, is probably a better raconteur than he is a director. So he actually is very funny to listen to. And he did have this famous story about being tapped to write the screenplay for, I think it was Superman Returns.
Yeah, sure.
With Nick Cage. And to that end, he took a meeting with the producer on the film, a man named John Peters,
Famous.
once a hairdresser
Yes.
and Barbara Streisand's boyfriend. Also the man who, with Peter Guber, ran Sony into the motherfucking ground in the early 90s.
They got to stop putting idiots in charge of movie studios. Let me just
put him in charge of American government.
Yeah, let me just look up what Warner Brothers is up to these days. Uh-oh.
Eep. Right. So he was one of the people who was responsible for losing Sony about $3 billion, maybe more. There's a whole book about it called Hit and Run, which I highly recommend. John Peters is a lunatic, and it is borne out by this Kevin Smith story. So Kevin Smith takes the meeting with him, and Kevin Smith pitches him his, idea for Superman. And one of John Peters' lunatic ideas is to have Superman at some point in the movie fight a giant mechanical spider.
Yeah, he fights polar bears. He's like, I don't want to see him fly. I don't want to see the stupid suit. John Peters just like not living in the world, not aware of context or how things work. Just, I don't know, just
also,
ideas just fly in and out of his head. It's completely permeable.
It probably doesn't help that he is also literally illiterate.
Yeah, you generally don't want that.
Like he dropped out of school in like 7th grade, I think. And first made his reputation as a hairdresser in Hollywood, which is a whole story in and of itself. But anyway, fast forward to...
Yeah, I wouldn't trust a podcast where the hosts are illiterate.
Tim, this is the only way I can communicate. You're stifling me.
Right.
So yeah, giant mechanical spider. It's got to go in the movie. And I forget in the story if like Kevin Smith like actually like took a crack at that or whatever, or if he just said no, fuck that. But anyway, the punchline is a few years later, Kevin Smith goes and sees Wild Wild West, and what is a pivotal part of that movie but a giant steampunk mechanical spider? Who produced that movie? John Peters. Who is John Peters? He is a certified crazy person. His fingerprints are all over this film. I don't think you can blame Barry Sonnenfeld a lot of it. I don't think you can blame the writers for it. It's the two guys who...
They'll tell you themselves all the stuff that we wrote isn't in this movie.
Right. It's the two guys who wrote all the Tremors movies. So, they're not idiots. But when they saw the film, they were like, okay, like, none of our shit.
Yeah, where's all the stuff that you paid us to write?
God knows where it came from.
Yeah.
Right. The thing is that they are adapting some pretty decent material, and Tim and I did take a look at the source, which was the television show, Wild Wild West, and it's fine. I myself prefer Man from U.N.C.L.E. because I find the two leads of that show more sexually desirable, although I have to say Robert Conrad would. I would knock that battery off his shoulder.
Right. Yeah.
I'll link that commercial in the show notes.
Okay.
What did you think of the television show Wild Wild West?
I really have to defer to your advice. I mean, it a little goes a long way. I think that the way you described it was, it ain't that deep. And it isn't.
Well, I was touched because, you've been incredibly busy lately. And to your credit, you've still put in the time for the show, but I could tell you were stressed because you're like, oh, I don't know about this week because like, I really want to like watch the TV series to see, what it's about. And there's like 4 seasons and yeah. And I was like, Tim, usually I'm the one panicking and doing too much work for the show. Yeah. Like just reading like awful books that no one should read that should be pulped, like relax. Like it's not The Prisoner.
Right.
It's a 60s television show, and I'm not super familiar with it, but I feel like we could probably grab a couple episodes from the IMDb, like top 10 Wild Wild West episodes list, and we'll be good. And so that's pretty much what we did. And fortunately,
like I
one of the episodes,
I can see how.
No, please.
Yeah, I can see how Patrick McGoohan got like prisoner pilled doing like How Many Years of Danger Man, where he just like yeah, every episode is the same. Like we don't have to keep doing this. Let's do something more interesting. Like, oh, there's a twist. Oh, big deal. Wow, very exciting.
Yeah, it's and I think they call it now like Monster of the Week.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, that fits.
Yeah.
Because even
it actually
even just as an aside too, like Farscape was very Monster of the Week. Like they didn't introduce like Scorpius, who became like the like arch villain for the rest of the series until 19 episodes in. So it's kind of like, hey, we're going from planet to planet. We meet another gorilla or a dictator or whatever, and then we deal with them. It's like, yeah, it gets a little old, especially if you're doing like 20 something odd episodes of that, for 4 seasons. You're like, here we go again. Yeah,
I think that with, like, I'm also not, like, super familiar with Farscape, but my impression is that because it's, like, an ensemble show and you've got these wild and crazy characters, like, surrounding, like, the audience surrogate, it's like, well, let's let these characters kind of, like, bounce off each other a little bit. And the audience, like, gets to know them and like them, and then, oh, shit, here comes a big bad.
Yeah, it really hit its stride around Nerve, but... That's, I think, the way most shows go. But yeah, like you're saying earlier in, like 60s sci-fi, 60s spy TV shows, it's like, we're just going to keep doing this. We're just going to keep churning this out. And it's like, it's a formula that works.
Yeah, and the thing about Wild Wild West is that it is kind of sci-fi. In fact, pretty, and, this just was showing our ignorance. When we did our Briscoe County Jr. episode, we didn't think to mention that a forerunner of that excellent show was, in fact, Wild Wild West.
Right.
Because yes, it's a spy show. It's about these 2 U.S. Marshals, like, working for the president at the time, Ulysses S. Grant, and, facing all these villains, but they're, like, crazy inventions and, like, weird...
Which is what the show is kind of written around.
Happening.
Whereas, like,
which is
come up with some goofy, MacGuffin, and then we'll build a premise around that. Like, okay, good,
right? You know what this is, Tim? It's folk horror. No, I mean it's a weird Western.
Yes, yeah. So like, we should be all over this because I like my weird Westerns and I like Briscoe County.
Briscoe County is just a great show, and its demise is so sad. But you can go back and listen to our episode on that. But Wild Wild West is the show. I have to say, like, the 2 leads, Robert Conrad and Ross Martin, have excellent chemistry right off the bat. I did watch just the first episode of the first season just to kind of orient myself. And they're great together. You can see why the show like worked really well. And the show is fine. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's 60s television, not that deep, but it's entertaining. My mom used to watch it. She liked it.
The show...
She also used to watch The Prisoner.
Okay. Yeah, the show is well paced, the writing is economical. Like you say, we're introduced to, the character of Artemis before knowing who he is, but then when we're introduced to him, we're like, oh, you're the guy who was in disguise in the earlier season. So it sets up his ability as, being a great, sort of undercover agent in disguise. We see him again where he's in disguise. Yes. And that becomes like his whole thing for the rest of the series, which is great. And they kind of use that disguise thing as they integrate that into the story of the pilot, where there's a switcheroo where the big obvious offensive stereotype of the antagonist.
There's kind of a swerve there too, which is wild.
Yeah, there are two swerves. So the guy who is supposed to be a Chinaman.
I'm going to spend a lot of time in this episode saying that is not the preferred nomenclature, dude.
Right, yeah. And the guy who is like a Mexican general, who's just a guerrilla warfare guy, a guerrilla raider.
Right.
Like he, it turns out that each guy isn't who you think they are. And
right. And in the style of 1960s television, the Mexican general is played by a Jewish actor. The Chinese guy is played by Victor Buono, just a big fat American. And this is very funny, actually, because of course, me being, wokely living in 2025, I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ, like, are you fucking kidding me with this shit? All right, whatever, it's the 60s.
Yeah, ancient Chinese secret, huh?
Yeah, and then at the end, it's like, wait, he's actually a white guy.
Yeah, see?
And I was like, what?
Wild West, way ahead of you.
Yeah, so... okay, well, congratulations, show. You got me.
Yeah. So, like, not only was the villain, like, stealing and murdering and burning down towns, he's also very offensive. So,
yes. Yeah. So, he's the villain.
Right.
And speaking of stereotypes, the other episode that we checked out ended up being quite fortuitous. This is tops on the IMDb's list of like the best Wild Wild West episodes, and it was one of the episodes from which they derived the villain for the eventual Wild Wild West movie. Except in the show, you have a supervillain named Miguelito Loveless, played by Michael Dunn, a little person. He is a dwarf mad scientist who sometimes uses a wheelchair.
Yeah. I love that, among other things, his name is Miguelito. He's little Miguel.
Like little Miguel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adorable.
No wonder he's so mad all the time.
Right, yeah. If people just refer to you as like also or something, like you resent them for the rest of your life.
For those who don't know, and I don't know why you would know, my dad's younger brother, his name was Earl, but for his entire life, he was the middle child called Tambien, which means also in Espanol.
Yeah, so it's, the eldest child, the youngest one, and the other one. That's great. Yeah.
And
so just going through life being called Miguelito.
Once you meet a couple of aggrieved middle children, you can't unsee it. You see the dynamic everywhere. And it's you start to feel bad because you start to see like, oh right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're kind of the addendum. You're not like you're not like the eldest who's expected to be the template, and you're not the youngest who's the baby.
If we need a backup progeny, we got this other one. So
to spare.
Yeah. And in that same kind of dynamic, like also if you look at Venture Brothers, he has his, half brother who's the little guy as well. Or his his fraternal twin or whatever. So I'm sure that's probably stolen from that, or any number of other spy genre things that are well worn by this point.
Right. And it's an interesting character dynamic, and the person who feels like they have been hard done by a cruel and uncaring society. It's because we're talking about mid-60s television, and this was a character that they brought back several times. Like, people liked the actor and the character so much that Loveless became a recurring villain on Wild Wild West.
Yeah, he's a great villain because, he has the, resentment from being like diminutive. Like he's smarter than West. He's more, scheming than West. He's a big brain in a small body. So like he has to use his wits. So he's very, cunning.
Right. And, it's simple, it's flat as television. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I do actually like the change they made to the character for the 1999 movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think making him like a pissed off, bigoted Southerner just works better in 1999.
Right. Yeah. And he does have, valid motivations as well in that. So even though they changed it, I think that it was a good change and it made for an even more iconic, just a more outlandish character in a positive way.
You heard it here first, folks. Tim advocates for the Lost Cause version of Civil War history. Like, wow. Okay, Tim. Well, cool. Whatever. You can have your opinions.
Okay,
Tim.
Great.
But Tim says Arliss Lovelace did nothing wrong.
He was merely a war profiteer, and America has a proud tradition of those.
Well, we'll get to him. So, long story short, it's perfectly fine material for a summer tentpole film that is supposed to be popcorn entertainment.
Right.
So, 1999, we get Wild Wild West, and I don't think anybody liked this movie. Like, Will Smith doesn't even like it.
Yeah, weird.
He still, jokes about it, and it's hilarious because I was looking at an article today where it was, they mentioned, Will Smith, still cracks jokes about it, and they're like, yeah, he even made a joke about Wild Wild West when he was promoting the Disney movie Aladdin. The shitty live action and CG remake of an existing Disney property. And I was like, I would literally rather watch Wild Wild West.
Oh, absolutely. Me too.
Than the Disney Aladdin remake. Because, yeah, it's like the degrees of soullessness are increasing as time goes by.
Yeah, it's just a negative feedback loop.
And the movie was considered a disappointment, even though it did make some money, but the budget was something like $170 million.
It was supposed to be so much bigger. It was supposed to be like another Men in Black or an Independence Day.
Right. And everybody loved Men in Black, including me and my dad. We went to see it in the theater and we had such a fun time.
Right. Yeah. Like just going over the list of talent involved with how could this go wrong?
Well,
yeah, even stuff in the beginning where thematically even the credits will explain the theme of the movie in a sort of subliminal way where you're following an insect that gets smashed on the shield of a windshield of a car, and they're like, oh, these damn bugs, and I'm like, all right, we have our theme already.
Yeah, that is such a clever opening to that film.
Yeah.
And then in Wild Wild West, you get this weird vignette to open the movie that just kind of drops you in, no characters that will stick around for the entirety of the movie are there. It's like a guy in peril, and then he gets killed, and then it's like, okay.
Yeah, sort of like a horror
movie. What the fuck was that?
I don't know. I mean, the titles are true to the original show. They're stylized just like the titles.
Yes.
So, they did do a what feels like a faithful adaptation of the show.
Yes, there is some care given to these source material, but I haven't looked into what fans of the show thought of this, but I'm sure they were just white-faced if any of them did deign to see it.
Or yellow-faced, in the pilot episode.
Victor Buono went to the theater and they're like, sir, we can't let you in like that. Please.
I did about that character, though, there's a bit of a homophone going on with his name, where he's like, oh, my name isn't Juan Manalo, it's Juan Manlo. And I'm like, oh, that's so deft. That's such a great way of mishearing something. Not Juan, but Yuan. Oh, I get it.
Yes.
I love it. That's something that I would like to see in a role-playing game, because that is basically my critical level of understanding narrative. I'm this would be a cool game.
Well, Tim, maybe you can make kind of like a steampunk Western game out of Wild Wild West.
I'm about 30 years too late.
And the thing about this movie is that, I had seen it before, and I remembered thinking, like, it wasn't that bad. Like, what the fuck? Like, people, like, really hate this movie. And watching it again today, I was really prepared to turn my brain off and, be like, I'm not going to think too hard about it. I'm just going to have a good time. And I was kind of like,
Maybe
You notice none of those are laughs.
right. Maybe
I did laugh really hard exactly once, but I'll get to that.
Maybe it's just got that John Peters stink on it, the way that like Ishtar. Listen back to our first episode on Ishtar. The way that's just been sort of like that just pilloried in public opinion to the point where you don't even need to watch it. You'd be like, I know this movie sucks. Like, have you seen it? Like, no, but I know it sucks. Like, all right. Like the movie Aladdin, which sucks, even though I haven't seen it.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, as you all know, I will defend parts of Ishtar. There are parts of it that I find delightful. Now, for this movie, I don't know that there's anything really to defend. I didn't sit there hating it, but I was just kind of like,
Well, yeah.
All right, that's a choice. And, and you know how, in our last episode, which was, of course, about 1989's Black Rain, starring gay actor Michael Douglas, you'll recall, Tim, that one thing I said to you about that movie was that, movies aren't stupid in that way.
Right.
Like, anymore. Well, you go forward 10 years, and the movies have evolved in stupidity.
Okay. Wow, they're getting...
But their
stupidity is getting smarter.
Right, it's over 9,000. The stupidity in this movie is like so emblematic of that era of blockbuster filmmaking. And there are times when it worked and audiences liked it, and then there are times when people were just like, you know what, no thanks.
Yeah, they kind of had enough of it. Like, I don't know, maybe sometime around, like, after Avengers Endgame came out. And we're just like, we're still doing the quipping, huh?
Did you see, speaking of Avengers, did you see the 1998 Avengers?
Yep. Now
that movie's like a fucking fever dream. I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah,
except that it was just like, what is happening?
That movie is just like, just really inert. I remember Eddie Izzard being in it. He is supposed to be very funny. His character, I think, had one line and then died. That movie's really...
That is funny.
No, that movie was... I don't know. I don't know what the hell is going on. Like, did the Spice World movie just like allow other movies to be that stupid? And people are like, oh, we can just do this?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
And I did read a review where this movie was lumped in with Spice World in, sort of this group of like, just unforgivable like mistakes of mainstream cinema. Now, as you'll recall, we kind of liked Spice World.
Right, yeah.
When we watched it for the show. It's sort of charming.
Yeah.
This less so. And to jump straight into it, I think a huge problem right off the bat with this is that Will Smith is incredibly charming and likable. Same for Kevin Kline. They have no chemistry in this movie at all. None.
Well, speaking of our previous episode, watching Black Rain, and like we posted on it, and we've gotten some comments, which is unusual because normally our posts just like sync without a trace. But someone's like, "Oh yeah,
yeah." Well, like when we podcast, it's like just shouting into an unexplored cave system.
Right. No. Yeah. It's like I may as well like just write microphone on like a used like paper towel roll and sit in my closet and record this.
But you do write Zencaster on the tube before you
right,
do it,
yeah.
right?
And some...
Because they are sponsoring
someday
this.
some imaginary money might show up in the show's bank account. But yeah, someone replied to our post about Black Rain, and you're like, oh yeah, like this is a really rewatchable movie and one of my favorites. And I am not that person.
Yeah.
But for someone, Black Rain is like that movie. And unfortunately, I have to be in the position of defending Wild Wild West because, Jen, I don't know if you know, but I saw this movie in the theater and I invited friend of the show, Paul, to come see it with me again.
Oh.
Paul was not pleased. Paul did not like this movie. But
Okay.
but turnabout is fair play because like he dragged me to like the 13th floor or something. And then he threw me off and I died. Yeah, something like that, where I'm just like, you can't give me shit about Wild Wild West because, we saw whatever.
Tim, you gotta see this movie. It's called Eight-Legged Freaks. It's amazing.
Right, yeah, it is hilarious. So I saw Wild Wild West in the theater, and all the problems of you're like, Will Smith and Kevin Kline have no fucking chemistry together. The script is garbage. Kevin Smith is like, oh, the giant spider. Oh man, I'm gonna make hay out of a college lecture about this. On my like guest speaking tour. But I'm there and I'm like, this is completely my shit. I'm totally vibing with this movie. I don't see any of the problems that everyone else is just like, this movie sucks and isn't funny. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Oh, I love this. So you tell me, like, because I don't understand even the things that suck about this movie. I like, so it's really wild to have people be like, what the hell is this movie? Like, the two leads have no chemistry. I don't laugh at anything. And I'm like, but why though? So I'm like that guy who watches Black Rain and is like, yeah, this movie's great. I'm like, is it? So
yeah, and the thing is that and like as listeners have heard, we had nice things to say about Black Rain. We definitely classed it as a very mid-tier Ridley Scott film.
Yeah. He
as
could,
people
he
who
could learn a
admire
thing or two
others of his
from
films.
his brother Tony.
the true auteur
Yes.
of the Scott family. Tony, rest in peace, sir. But back to Barry Sonnenfeld. Let's do it this way, Tim. Give me an example of something about the movie that people would say sucks and that you find it delightful.
Some of the things that, well, I mean, maybe it is just like residual, like how you imprinted upon the Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you're a big like Robert Vaughn head. So like
Wait, so you ship Will Smith and Kevin Kline?
No, I saw A Fish Called Wanda when I was like a tween, and I'm like, this Kevin Kline guy, like, I'm gonna do his.
I would have sex with him.
No, I'm like, his style of comedy is great, and I will follow him anywhere. So he just really sells it in a way where I'm like, this is great. Kenneth Branagh. I don't know if you've heard, he's a pretty good actor. And he commits to this outlandish character. And I'm like, I am here for this character being utterly ridiculous. I like that he's a resentful, bitter racist. I'm like, yeah, those are good traits in a villain. Will Smith is...
No, to stop you on Branagh, this is very interesting because like I said, I do like the approach to the character. Like, I'm perfectly fine with this twist on the Loveless character. I don't have a problem with that. I've been a fan of Branagh for a long time, up to a point. One of my favorite films is Dead Again, starring and directed by Kenneth Branagh, also starring his wife at the time, Emma Thompson. Love that movie. Just like a really like out there noir thriller that's very romantic, where I very rarely go for romantic films. I've liked a lot of his other directorial work. Henry V is an amazing Shakespeare adaptation. And then there was a point where Branagh just kind of started to like lose his mind or something. Like, he directed the first Thor movie.
Okay.
And I saw that and like, it was like, and for some reason, and I'm not saying it's as bad as Battlefield Earth, but there were so many canted frames, like Battlefield Earth, canted frames for no reason. And I was like, Branagh, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is not necessary. And then he started playing Hercule Poirot, and I tried to watch, the remake of Murder on the Orient Express, and I got 5 or 10 minutes into it, and I was like, I can't do this.
Oof,
like,
okay.
I'm just gonna stroke out from pure rage, because whenever Branagh tries to be funny, it is like nails in a chalkboard to me. And his portrayal of Poirot, and Poirot is a very funny, droll character, but like he just takes it to this level which is just like intolerable. And there's a little bit of this in the Arliss Lovelace character. Like, he's having a good time, and I appreciate it. It's like kind of fun. But there are times when his southern accent, like, he sounds like Al Gore in a weird way. Okay. And it's like it is a Benoit Blanc ass accent. And whatever. He's a cartoon villain who walks around on a giant mechanical spider.
Yeah.
He's got no fucking legs.
It doesn't walk around.
It shouldn't matter.
Right.
But I'm like, oh God, this is where it started to turn. This is where Branagh kind of started to like go off the rails, because like the very next year he made Love's Labour's Lost. And I saw that movie at the theater I worked at, and I was like, wow, like what the fuck happened to Kenneth Branagh? Because like none of this works. This is fucking terrible. Yeah. And the man is insanely successful as a director. So maybe the joke's on me. But he's
what they really needed for this sort of comedic role was a gifted comedic actor like George Clooney.
Well, you know what, Tim? I would say that's the one saving grace of this movie, is that it doesn't have fucking George Clooney.
Yeah, he was originally attached to this, and just a bit of backstory, Jen finds George Clooney's comedy atrocious. Like, worse than Kenneth Branagh.
This is how much I dislike George Clooney. The other week, I rewatched Fantastic Mr. Fox, the Wes Anderson film. Very charming film. I hate George Clooney so much, I was getting riled just listening to his voice. It's not even his fucking face on the screen. It's like a little fucking model fox.
You're like, I hate this fucking fox.
Clooney! Yeah. I don't fuck with him. And I know I'm alone on this earth, but just no thanks. He's not funny. Just no. And the reason he bowed out of this movie was because he was originally cast as Artemis Gordon. And he was like, hey, wait a minute. Will Smith is getting all the funny lines. Like, Sonnenfeld et al., their approach was that, Will Smith is a funny guy as Jim West, and Artemis Gordon is going to be more of a straight man.
Yeah, the straight man doesn't typically get the laugh lines. Right.
It's, and the thing about a straight man is that that's actually like a really difficult role to play, and it takes a lot of talent.
Yeah. George Burns is Georgian Gracie.
Yeah, or Margaret Dumont in the Marx Brothers.
Oh, yes. You thought our references were old before.
Our next episode is going to be about Fanny Bryce. No, like, what's funny about Margaret Dumont is that there were actually people for a while who thought that she, like, legitimately didn't, like, know what she was doing. That she was, like, just completely confused by the Marx Brothers' antics. And she was just, like, that was her, like, reacting, like, for real. Like, she wasn't just like a legitimately talented comedic actress. Yeah. And she was just like this confused woman who was like too dumb to know it was all pretend.
If only there was like a job where you could like pretend to feel a certain way or like act a way different than the way you normally did.
Yeah, it's like that is such an insane way to like, look at a comedian. Like, what the fuck? But anyway, yeah, so Clooney, smart man. He was like, no, I want to be funny. I don't want to just be like the straight man. And I think this did create...
Like, George, sorry, you're going to have to settle for being the most handsome man in the world. You can't be funny.
Hey, well, everyone fucking loves him except me, including the fucking Coen brothers. So, hey, what can I say? Right. I could be wrong about all of this. But I think that this was a little tough for Kevin Kline because, like Tim said, this is a comedic actor par excellence. Incredibly funny guy. Yeah. But he's kind of stuck in this straight man role. And I don't think he was happy about that. And from a little bit of what I read, is he'd kind of passed the zenith of his career. Like, Fish Called Wanda was like in the 80s. Like, he had gotten really good notices for In and Out, which had been a couple of years before.
Yeah, which I remember also liking.
Yeah, very funny movie. But obviously he kind of passed the apex, and this was kind of like the decline of
so
like
he's the third man with
actor.
pre-crazy Branagh and Will Smith just like knocking it out of the park left and right. And also here's the guy who
like peak Will Smith.
Right, yeah. And then there's this guy.
Right. So that was probably a little tough for him. And I really think it comes through on the screen.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
Like and that's another thing which that's one thing which I don't like in the change from television screen to big screen.
Okay.
The first episode of Wild Wild West, like, oh, these men have worked together before. Like, they're just like clockwork, and they have like such a rapport.
Yeah.
And there's an obvious affection for each other and a trust.
Yeah, and that comes through.
That's great. Yeah. And those two actors, even though, I'd say Robert Conrad isn't like the greatest actor in the world, but like his rapport with Ross Martin was extremely good. With Will Smith and Kevin Kline as Gordon and West, the approach in the screenplay, which I think comes from lazy writing, is to be like, oh, okay, well, what if they like hate each other right off the bat?
Well, it didn't seem like...
And it's like, oh, okay.
They didn't really do that, though, or not as badly as seen in other places, because really... And people criticize it for being like a comedy works if you have like the loose cannon, like, the straight lace guy, like, the straight man to play off each other. But it's like, well, one of them's, the wisecracking one and the other one's like the straight man, but it's never clear which. So you just get like two wacky characters, like not really, finding the scene in sort of improv terms, where it's like they aren't complimenting each other, they're just kind of going their own way, because it's like I'm going to be the I'm going to be the the funny character. It's like, no, I'm going to be the funny character. But I've seen it more hack and obvious in other movies, and this one I just see it presented as there are two different ways of doing things, which I think is complementary. There's the Jim West way of doing things, where it's very straightforward, action oriented, and there's the Artemis Gordon way of doing things, which is, much more cerebral. And I'm like, yeah, like I get that. And, maybe it is just that, I watch movies with, the mind of a 13-year-old, but I'm like, oh, that makes complete sense.
Whom amongst
right,
us?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this, like, when the movie starts and these two kind of get like partnered by Ulysses S. Grant, and they're both like, oh, great, I gotta work with this fucking guy. And you're like, okay, well, let's see how this plays out.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I'll do it my way. It's like, no, I'll do it my way. And I feel like there's a comfortable rivalry there of just, different approaches to solving the same kind of problem, rather than being like, you asshole and you suck. And just like, no, it's like, I have a better way of doing this, and I will condescend to you what my superior plan is.
Well, the thing is that, we get the story rolling, like they've already clashed at the bordello or wherever. And then they have to go to like a rich people party.
Right. Well,
and,
it starts with,
and okay, but like, let me finish my point.
Okay.
So they end up at this rich people party, and, hilarity happens, and, Jim West tangles with Loveless. He meets some chicks, and God, I'm already forgetting the movie. But then they end up having to get out of there in a hurry. The movie curdles for me when Artemis Gordon leaves Jim West to basically be lynched. And like, I'm not exaggerating. I know people like to like throw that term around inappropriately. No, it's a literal lynching. The partygoers have seized Jim West, a black man, and they are going to hang him with a rope.
Right.
And it was like, okay, wow, Artemis Gordon is a big old piece of shit. Like, what the fuck, dude? This is your partner. I know you don't like him, but Christ.
Right.
And the thing is that there is, and people objected to like a lot of the kind of like racial friction in this movie. Watching it now, I have no problem with any of it, because so much of it is like, it's like Cleavon Little in Blazing Saddles. It's like, Oh no, this is a man like, in spite of people trying to like put him in his place, he is completely in command of the situation.
Yeah,
Like
he's
gives as
Bugs
good as he
Bunny in those
gets.
scenes,
Like,
basically.
yeah, shows up the stupid white people,
Yeah.
the common clay of the new American West,
Mm-hmm.
morons. Like, it's great. I loved seeing Will Smith just fucking own these people over and over again. But then, like, a lynching? Okay, wow, like tonally this is a lot. And I appreciated a lot of the because if any time that you're dealing with racism, and Blazing Saddles did this really well, like including like multiple uses of the hard R.
Right.
That can be like really like a gut punch to hear that stuff. But in Blazing Saddles, it's very funny. And for the most part in this movie, anytime Jim West is put in a position where somebody is like overtly racist to him, he fucking handles it, and it's great. Him like monologuing, like trying to talk his head out of a noose is like, it's just, oof, man, feels bad. And I'm still going like, yo, Artemis Gordon, what the fuck is your problem? Are you racist too? Like, what the fuck? Like, help your guy out. What are you doing?
All right.
It didn't, that's the part that didn't work for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the movie earlier on, we're introduced to Artemis in drag. He knows Salma Hayek, who's also in this movie, more or less. And it fits with what the show originally did, where it's like, look, Artemis is going to be in ridiculous costumes this entire movie. Like, that is his thing. We meet him in very obvious drag. So it's like, we know that we're doing this thing and we know that it isn't going to work, but that we know it isn't going to work. We're still going to lean into it. And I think like that kind of redeems it, even if it's just unpleasant to watch. Maybe not funny. I think that because it isn't good is like what I enjoy about it. Because it is a guy who is very self-assured in his ability to pull off a disguise, even if to us, the audience, you're like, you look terrible. And West's character does kind of tear him down over that, where it's like you make a terrible woman, like you're really bad at this. And yeah, the reversal happens where it is these two characters still like, maybe they don't have chemistry as actors, but I think that the characters make sense in that they absolutely are not meshing because they have two different incompatible approaches to solving the problem, both of them being ridiculous in their own ways, where West, like, his approach to problem solving is, I'm going to show up to this costume party of rich old former slave owners to find the Confederate soldier and then shoot him. It's like, because that is the direct solution to the problem that we have. Meanwhile, Artemis is like,
right, and that's fine. I support
right,
that.
yeah. Meanwhile, Artemis has to point out to him, you're an armed black federal lawman at a Southern cotillion. How do you think that's going to go over? So his solution is,
right,
we go in goofy costumes. It's like, that is just as stupid a plan as the one that West had.
right.
So, and it is a reversal because West finds a large masked woman, or you're like, holy shit, Artemis, you're really terrible at this, but it's not him. So it's the old switcheroo, and then that leads to him getting lynched, or potentially.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like the drag stuff in this movie, I was just like, whatever, it's 1999. Who cares?
I mean, it is played for humor.
Right. Which, like, whatever. But, they make a lot of hay out of, like, the cross-dressing comedy. And I was like, okay. But then they do another bit with Will Smith in drag near the end of the movie. And it's like, okay, like, you spent that nickel.
Yeah,
like,
that part is pretty lousy.
Like, this isn't as hilarious as you think it is, John Peters.
Right, yeah, it is kind of a dearth of ideas. Like, I understand it coming back around, like, because, like, in just, like, screenwriting, formalist terms, it's like, you do the wrong thing wrong, and then you do the right thing wrong, and then you do the right thing right. And it's Will Smith's character understanding how to approach a problem like an Artemis solution, an Artemis approach, solving a problem with a Jim West solution, because he shoots the gun when he normally wouldn't carry a gun. Kung Fu never carried a gun. So yeah, you see how the two characters are learning from each other.
But let's not talk about nooses in Kung Fu.
No, right, yeah. Let's instead talk about the loose cannon cop and the by the book cop in Black Rain, and how they both learn to break and play by the rules.
Right, until one of them gets beheaded.
Right, yeah. No, I'm talking about the Japanese guy. The one who loses his career because he did someone a favor. So, yeah.
I'm just glad Ken Takakura didn't appear in drag at any point in Black Rain.
No, but I mean, he was seen with Americans, and that's got to be deeply disrespectful.
Very
yeah,
dishonorable.
Lose his face. I know, Robert Zadar.
And that's... The thing with when you get like the second drag act coming around, it was like the part in the first parts of the Caribbean movie, where they go to the cave a second time, and
a repeated
in the theater, I think I was literally just like, oh come on, like no, like like I'm bored, like do something different.
Right, yeah.
But
maybe it's
that's like, geez.
Maybe it's...
There's like a whole academic paper that could be written about drag and sexuality in Wild Wild West. You know what? I'm going to leave that to Bitter Corella.
Yeah, right. Well, because you're illiterate. Like, you couldn't write it.
Yeah, that exactly.
Yeah.
I can't use academic language. I can't even use good English talk.
No.
I don't talk good at all.
No, you let the pictures do the talking. That's why we aren't a book review podcast.
What's a book?
It's a thing you use, like, if a table isn't balanced.
Well, that's very practical.
Yeah. Well, it's because I use machines to solve problems. That's why I identify with the Artemis character. Like, in particular, there's the horse versus car race of them to get to the train. And, of course, Artemis gets there first because he takes a fucking motorcycle or a velocipede.
The motorcycle's fun. Also thanks to
visionary John Peters.
Because he
says you can have motorcycles in 1868.
Yeah, and this is where I absolutely depart with John Peters. He said, horses are boring.
Right, yeah. Look, maybe you haven't met the right horse.
Sir.
Like, maybe you haven't met a talking horse. One who can, make stock picks.
Yeah. Maybe you haven't met the lovable Comet from The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. Perhaps you haven't met another fine black actor, the Black Stallion.
I've only seen the movie The Italian Stallion. I think it's different. Yeah. So we have these two different approaches to problem solving, and I'm here for that because I am still like mentally a 13-year-old watching this movie. I do like that when West catches up to Artemis in the train, he's sitting in a chair knitting chainmail. I don't know, maybe I just like the premise or the setting where it is this sort of Jules Verne-esque sort of steampunk thing. I mean, I'm not into steampunk, but like I do like the
God no.
Yeah, I'm nowhere near that precious.
I actually like, the steampunk elements in this are among the things I minded the least in the movie.
Right.
I thought it was like kind of a fun texture.
Yeah. Steampunk's kind of been done to death, and I just think so much of it has just become derivative. But I do like, what's been described as Vernian, Jules Verne-esque technology. And I just, it tickles my fancy. That is sort of a, anachronistic, spy gadgets. It's, a contemporary version of something with, a period kind of solution. It's not sending an email or a telegram. It's using a carrier pigeon. Like, okay, cool. I like that sort of speaking in the parlance of its times to address a problem that, we would see.
It's funny you mentioned the chainmail armor, because that was one of the few things that pays off in the movie. It kind of highlights another thing which I consider a flaw in the film. It's very satisfying when the chainmail comes back around. The thing that Jim West scoffed at initially when he saw it,
Yes.
ends up saving his life
Mm-hmm.
near the end of the movie. I was like, oh, that's great. Set up, pay off.
Yes.
Like, that's good. The way the movie is that because it does take place in this weird steampunk Western universe, there are lots of fun gadgets and devices, like levers that you pull and things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like Artemis Gordon has like all these kinds of devices that'll get you out of a pickle, although sometimes they don't
Right.
quite work out
It's
the
like
right
any
way.
spy movie. It's all dependent on these gadgets that work most of the time.
Right. But the way that they are in this movie, it's not like they tried.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they understood that they needed to create a universe of gadgets and clockwork gears. It's because it's not like the cleverest way to write that stuff. And I admit this is very, very difficult. Like it's really hard to set up and pay off something like that well. And in this movie, I feel like there was a potential for all kinds of sets up and payoffs, but it feels more like, oh, we need to get this character out of the situation and into the next situation. So let's just have
It's just rushed.
like a trap door
Right.
that they fall
Oh,
through.
okay.
Or let's have a lever that they pull and then boom.
Yeah, you have just an instant like get out of scene button.
Yeah, which maybe I'm asking too much for a big budget 1999 like popcorn flick, but
like, think
I was like,
things
I
through.
feel like this could have been done better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can.
Especially because 1999, a lot of good ass movies coming out that year.
Yeah, it was a thick field of landmark movies that came out that year, so it's easy to
Yes.
get lost in this. It's sort of like I don't remember the movie in particular, but one of the ones that we'd reviewed earlier that just sank without a trace is because it's like, oh, it was only up against like Blade Runner and Indiana Jones and a Star Wars sequel or something. Like,
Right.
yeah, sorry. Oh no, maybe it might have been The Sorcerer.
Oh, right, yeah, because
Sorcerer versus Star Wars.
Friedkin's
Grudge match.
yes, yeah, and I literally saw a meme about that on Blue Sky the other day, where it was one of those like guys going back in time with a time machine. The Chad goes back in time.
Yeah.
He's trying to talk William Friedkin into not releasing Sorcerer against Star
Right,
Wars,
yeah.
and then it's just the picture of Friedkin. He's like, fuck you, like I'll fucking release it whenever, fuckity fuck.
Yeah, like he's gonna listen
know?
to anyone's advice on anything.
Not at that age.
No.
That was well before he met Sherry.
Right. And Emmett Walsh is in this.
Listen to our Black Rain episode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, M.M. Walsh.
Yeah. So like I like seeing
That was
him.
nice.
Like I like seeing all the actors in this. So I mean maybe I'm just, starry-eyed watching that. Like I like the actors and I like the premise and I'm like, yeah, guys, just go have fun. I'll be here. I'll just be sitting in the seat. You do whatever. It doesn't matter.
There are a couple of fun little surprises in this movie, actor-wise. One of which, unfortunately, in a basically silent part, Musetta Vander from the Oblivion movies.
Yes, I was updating her Wikipedia entry after as I was watching this. Go check the edits on Wikipedia if you don't believe me.
Check timestamp and everything. I'll say this. I would rather watch Wild Wild West again than either Oblivion film.
You'd rather watch a $170 million Hollywood
Woof.
movie than a full moon feature?
I mean, there have been times on the show when I've said I would rather have watched a Puppet Master film.
Okay,
but,
yeah. This isn't it.
The needle swings back and forth. I love her. She is gorgeous.
Yes.
And she has very little to do in this, unfortunately.
Well, she has to stand around and look pretty, which is what 5 of the other central cast of this movie have to do. Because, yeah, it is her.
I'm sure John Peters was insistent on them casting a lot of hot women.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I can dig that. Like, we've talked about, like Wonder Woman and Fox Force 5 and whatever series that premise was based on as like a trope.
Sisters of Death.
Yeah. And that makes sense for, Kenneth Branagh's, Loveless as a guy who's been, basically like cut in half and resents it for, his work making war machines for the Confederacy, for the traitorous southern half of the U.S. Like, I can understand him, being sexually frustrated. So of course he'd want to surround himself with these like beautiful women. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's like that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't necessarily argue against it. It is a little weird in tone when the next thing you know and I know I just said like, hey, I don't mind that he's like a big piece of shit racist, but then when he's like ranting about his lack of sexual potency and calling Will Smith a blackamoor and is like, I thought this was like a fun summer popcorn flick. Like, wow, dude, like,
yeah,
okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, they said they like dialed it back. And
good God.
Yeah, and amongst like all of them, because we have Miss Lippenreader, Minutia, Amazonia. Like, yeah, they all have their roles to fill. It's Miss East, played by Bai Ling.
Oh, Bai Ling.
Yeah, just
y'all remember Bai Ling? Now, Bai Ling, I always love when I see her because back in the day, she was a fixture on the Go Fug Yourself fashion blog because she was always being photographed around town wearing some of the wildest shit.
Yeah, just
you will
wearing
ever see.
like police no crossing tape as an outfit.
Yeah, and she was, and I'll say she was ahead of her time because that was a fashion moment in Hollywood when like you had like Joan Rivers, Fashion Police, and like the internet was just getting started and stars were kind of a little afraid to be roasted for what they were wearing on the red carpet. So the looks tended to be very toned down. It was, you wouldn't get a lot of shares, and like Bob Mackie headdresses.
Shame.
Like those were definite outliers. And Bai Ling was an outlier. And God bless her.
Yeah, also well cast because if you crank the dial on like Asianness any further, you basically get a stereotype.
I did think when she introduces herself as Miss East, I was like, well, at least it's not like in Austin Powers 2 with fuck you and fuck me.
Comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, 1999,
right,
baby.
Yeah. So she's kind of stunt cast in that, being like, I am the most Asian woman you will ever meet. And I'm like, okay, sure. Everything else has been like just cranked up to 11 on this. Why not?
I will link the article that I sent to Tim from Mel Magazine, which is about the making of the film and which kind of got us up to speed on the production. But they did talk to Bai Ling, and I really, I really love her quotes because, and when, in fact, I'll just read a paragraph from it. She said, "Don't even think it's not successful. Of course, it's super successful. In history, when money doesn't matter anymore, this film is one of the best."
Yeah, that's a very tortured way of explaining whatever the hell point she's making.
And and it says here, when she watched it in China, her mother asked her why she exposed most of her ass in the scene in which she seduces Smith. To which Bai Ling says, "In the mood of seducing, I didn't care what part they showed because that's not my concern." When she saw the film on the big screen, she said, "Wow, my ass looks so beautiful and sexy. I'm so proud it's captured on screen. I'm so proud it's captured on screen." That's the spirit, queen.
That's what she's here for, yeah. Maybe
because like there's a shot just of her ass like being planted on a desk.
Yeah, maybe they could have had
like,
her
okay.
rewrite the script. I don't know.
I would watch that.
Yeah.
Also, like just parenthetically, like, did you see this photo of Will Smith, Salma Hayek, and Kevin Kline like in front of the BJ's in Westwood at the premiere?
Classic Westwood.
Yeah, like, man, I just like time traveled, like just looking at that photo. What a shitty part of town. Anyway.
Yeah. Westwood is awful. Yeah, if it's possible for a village to hate you, that'd be the place to go. They get a clue while doing some, movie detective work. Because that guy at the beginning we didn't know who he was, who got his head cut off, and at some point Artemis gets a package that we aren't explained what it is. It turns out to be the severed head. He projects some light through it, and he mentions the retinal terminus theory. Now, that's just a bunch of movie nonsense. The likes of which you might use in another movie that we covered, Horror Express,
which also took place on a train.
Yeah, so it has just like
it's science.
Yeah, it has pulpy adventure elements in it that, as someone who only consumes media through the tabletop medium, I'm like, yeah, that's probably the way it works. Sure, why not?
If you can't base a role-playing game on it, Tim doesn't even want to know about it.
Right? No, it's the sort of
it's
thing.
Really surprising because it was surprising because first he played the Gene Dealman tabletop game before he even watched the movie. I was surprised that was even a thing.
Oh no, yeah, it was one of those 8-bit like point and click games where like you. Yeah.
It takes 3 hours to play.
Well, yeah, I mean, it predated Heavy Rain, where it's like you got to like make the toast, and then you got to do the laundry, and then you sit in the kitchen, and you wait for the toast to finish cooking, and yeah, like that's the game. Like that's the adventure is understanding that this is your time being wasted, and then there's like a Street Fighter thing at the end where you kill a guy with a pair of scissors.
Hell yeah!
Yeah,
dude.
but I mean, it's all set up. It's all very organic to the gameplay. God, I'd like to see that, but I'm not going to waste 6 months of my life making that happen.
Yeah, because the thing is it would take you 6 months. Like, you would put that level of care into it.
Yeah, Super Gene Dealman. God. Why?
You see, originally it was Doki Doki Panic, but then they repurposed it as Gene Dealman for the United States.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No, like...
Yeah.
When you're at the table and the GM gives you like a problem to solve, but it's not really well defined, kind of showing my ass here. But then you as a player, like, well, we got to make something happen. Be like, I don't know, is there a fire extinguisher on the space shuttle? And the GM's like, sure, I guess. And that's how it leads to ridiculous things where it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna put the fishbowl on my head. I have enough endurance. I'm gonna hold my breath. I'm gonna use a fire extinguisher to get out into space, and then I'm gonna hit the monkey with the rock, and then that unlocks the safe, and you're like, sure, fuck yeah, whatever, yeah, I guess that's what happened. It's very like Sierra adventure game sort of style, but I don't know, that's the sort of thing where I'm like, sure, yeah, just play around with this premise, whatever you think, whatever you can sell me on, I'll roll with it. I mean, that's ROLL or ROLE because it's a role-playing game. Jeez, doesn't matter. So yeah, when the movie does stupid stuff like this, I'm like, yeah, sure, probably.
Well, some stupid stuff in the movie, I could just roll with because, like, who cares? It's like pulp, sci-fi, western, steampunk.
Yeah.
Like, Artemis Gordon getting an image of the dead guy's, the last thing the dead guy saw. I was like, oh, that's great. I know that spurious theory that was quickly disproven, but which hung around in the popular culture. We saw it in the movie Horror Express with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
And a bunch of hot chicks.
I think it's when the movie gets... Well, I'm not going to object to that. Yeah. Poor Musetta Vander. Like, I wish she could have gotten, like, more of a career, but I don't know. She's kind of, like, made her own... path in B pictures, but she's so hot though, and she's like the only good thing about fucking Oblivion. The movies are just anyway,
so yeah, to again describe this in role-playing terms, like it's intellect versus wisdom. So just two different traits. Salma Hayek is in this. And there's a scene of her in profile in like her like lingerie outfit that she wears half the movie before disappearing inexplicably.
You were at a formative age somehow when you saw this.
I guess, or my.
Even though I know you were in college, but you were somehow
I was still
like
forming,
sank into your brain in like particular ways. Yeah.
Well, you go off to college, you reinvent yourself.
I guess this was like when I was in college and I saw Rope.
Yes. And David Carradine had a similar encounter.
Well, the thing was that Carradine went to see Rope, and like he sat through the opening credits, and then there's that first shot where they kill the kid, and he was like, oh shit, I already came in my pants. Like,
yeah, I'm done. This movie's great.
Yeah.
4 stars.
Hitchcock's best.
Yeah.
10 stars. But anyway, yeah, Selma Hayek. I wish she'd had. I wish this part was written a little better because Selma Hayek is just delightful.
Yeah, and especially in the original series, like, you know, when Jim West meets, oh God, I forgot her name.
Suzanne Pleshette.
Yeah, and it's like she's already like a pistol packing mama. She's
and they have history.
Yeah, and she like kind of can do her own thing as like a femme fatale. But then in this, you know, the character of Rita is just kind of dead weight and like, well, that isn't great. Yeah. I mean, you can see like anytime she stands up exactly why she was cast.
Sure.
But I'd like a little, I don't know, meat on that.
Meat?
Well,
I'd like a little flap in those long johns, if you know what I'm saying. Wait, what are we talking about?
Tits.
And you know what? That's kind of reflective of a lot of the writing in this movie, especially where it comes to women. And I'm sorry to go Susan Faludi again, because normally I don't.
Right.
Maybe we just usually watch like a different quality of film.
Mm-hmm.
Like Black Rain was like stupid in that late 80s way. This is very stupid in that late 90s blockbuster way. Yeah. And that's definitely shown in the way that the female characters are handled because, and maybe that's another problem I have with the movie where it's, you know, a lot of the stuff in it is fine until they like keep hammering on it. It's like, oh, you know, it's cute. Like Artemis Gordon and Rita obviously kind of like each other, but she likes Jim West a little too. And that kind of like causes a little friction. And
yeah, she likes Artemis, but she's attracted to West. Right.
And so there's a little bit of banter going on there, some of it with you know, some Freudian slips and like a little bit sexualized,
but
let's get some shut ass. They keep doing it, and I can't remember the episode where I had the same problem with another movie where there's like a certain amount of like, oh hey, you know, like guy talk that you will accept in a particular kind of movie, but when every character speaks in the same kind of like leering tone, like everyone in the movie like looks at women in the exact same way, and it's just like, okay, Jesus Christ, we get it, tits and ass. And the movie kind of starts to verge on that a little bit for me. And it doesn't help that a lot of Rita's actions don't make sense.
She's dead weight.
Yeah, like, and Jim West says it. He doesn't want to take her along because, she's going to be a distraction and she's going to hold us back. And then she just proves him right by being a big load, getting them captured. And I do not understand why at the end of the movie she's like, oh, that guy said was my father. Actually, he's my husband.
Yeah, I feel like there's a subplot that may have gotten cut out of this movie or something. Because Rita disappears for like half an hour.
Yeah, and that revelation just makes her seem like a huge bitch.
But you know, you will put up with that for tits like that.
I mean, I guess, but I'm like, this is some incel shit, man. Like, you know, no, I know you were joking, but like, you know, the point still stands. It's like, oh wow, she sure fooled them. She sure strung them along like women do. It's like, oh.
Well, I mean, it's just obvious that it's like, oh, one of us has a chance with this woman, right? It's like, no, she's married. Sorry, like, joke's on us. Like, they're fighting with each other over this woman who's already spoken for.
Yeah, I mean,
like that's just basic ass, you know, screenwriting stuff.
That's what it is. This is rudimentary screenwriting at best. It's like, I don't know, just get us along to the next set piece. Like, we got to get, you know, John says we got to get to the spider.
Right,
like,
yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. We got to.
We don't have anything to do with Rita. Just keep her in like her showgirl outfit so we can see them titties, and then we'll put her in some long johns with the flap hang down so we can see her ass.
You know what? Like, at least we don't have to see Quentin Tarantino sucking on her toes.
Ah, jeez, yeah. I mean, she does look good enough that I would drink tequila off of her feet, but not.
But, you know, to your credit, you'd be like, you know, oh, like, okay, but like, you sure you don't want to like, you know, do something else? Like maybe like,
right.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll have a drink, but does it have to be this way? But all right. She's so pretty, though.
She is. Yeah, like there's a scene of her, like she's in a cage and just in profile, you're just like, wow. So
Yeah. She's a star.
yeah. And you say
should have given her more to do.
or anything. And
like if she had even been written like Suzanne Plachette's character in the first episode of the television series, that would have been something.
Yeah, as previously stated. Yeah, so I know that you said like it does seem a little much that like both Artemis and West are kind of like just like really taken with her in the way that I obviously am, because she's an attractive movie star.
No, it's not that.
But like I'm getting to that. The thing is like, yeah, it's
okay.
The back and forth. But the thing that I like about it is its consistency, because every character is individual until they encounter Rita, where they just turn into the wolf from that cartoon. Because not only is it West, who didn't want to have her along, is like, let's get some shut ass, and Artemis saying like she's like a breath of fresh air, but then it is West telling M. Emmett Walsh, Coleman, the driver, he's like, stop the train. We got, this dead weight, half naked woman. We need to get off the train. And what is Coleman's reaction? Half naked?
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't hear anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I just love that all other like character traits fall away in the face of this. I think that's funny.
I guess because like, and all of these things are, I think because these things are kind of like funny, like in, just like a touch, just like a little bit,
mm-hmm.
Just have one bit where they're incredibly distracted by this beautiful, curvaceous woman's attributes. Mm-hmm. It's just that like a lot of other things in the movie, they just keep hammering on it. It's the same tone. It's like the same way of like, tits. It's like, God damn, guys, like I like tits too, but fuck, can we do something else for a little while? Like, it stops being fun when all the characters basically speak with the same voice and hammer on the same jokes. So, but because I didn't see this at a formative age, it probably hits different.
Could be. Yeah, so, I don't know. Because, I mean, there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, I'm watching it, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I get what you're saying.
I'm just cackling, like, imagining you and Paul seeing this in the theater. And, like, you're having just such a great time. And Paul's like,
this movie's fucking stupid. Yeah. Like,
what the fuck?
I am so going to make him see the 13th floor because of this. Or whatever. I don't know.
What was the worst thing I saw in Westwood? Because I saw some shit there.
Oh, the worst thing I ever saw was the movie, like the Leslie Nielsen, like 2001 whatever space travesty.
Ooh,
like
jeez, I think that tops anything.
I didn't value my time enough to walk out of that, but I should have. That movie is awful.
Well, let's move on to something better. Wild Wild West.
Yes, a delightful adventure comedy romp with some great actors, some real movie stars, some great comedians, and Salma Hayek, who just looks incredible. Also, the chick from Oblivion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also looking good.
Yeah.
Doing very little, sadly.
Right. Well, she's a minor character. Yeah. They have a giant mechanical spider. Just watch the Kevin Smith speech about that. West fights some like steampunk cyborg goons, which I mean, hell,
like just these insane grizzled NPCs.
Yeah, like if I was at a convention game and like that happened, I'm like, that's pretty cool, dude. I like that you added that. I didn't pay anything to be here.
2 things about that scene.
Yeah.
2 things about this bit. First thing, this was the point where I genuinely busted a gut.
Yeah.
When Jim West faced that guy with like the knife arm.
Yeah.
And then Jim West is like, oh, I got one of those too. And then, like the knife comes out of his boot. And then the guy like reveals his arm with the other knife.
Yes.
And then he goes, "Whoa," and he does this intense like, swinging of the knives, like very elaborately choreographed like display. And they cut back to Jim West, and then he like looks down his foot, and just like with his heel on the ground, he just goes, oh, like swinging the knife back and forth, like just real stupid. And I popped. I laughed so hard at that for some reason.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
It just struck me as funny.
Yeah, maybe it's just like that role-playing sort of aesthetic where it's like, if you describe this to someone, it's like, you guys look like idiots. Like, yeah, we do.
It was a funny bit. I like that. And then the other thing...
but you're there and you're being an idiot and you're like, this is fun. So...
Yeah. And then after that, there's a point where Jim West says, no more Mr. Knife Guy. And then I said, oh, okay, this is why Tim likes this movie.
Oh, yeah, like James Bond can get away with that, but Jim West can't, sure.
No. That's like, because that is 1,000,000% something that you would say.
I wish I could write as well as the writers for Wild Wild West.
Whoever the fuck wrote Wild Wild West. I wish I could write as well as John Peters with a boner and a bunch of cocaine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some things that I didn't like is the Desert Wasp thing because it's such obvious exposition. Yeah, Jim West in drag.
Oh, shit, it's work. Like, but Tim... It's just like in Master and Commander with the phasmid, the stick insect.
Okay, yeah. Well, you know how much I hated that movie too.
This movie is a dry run for Master and Commander. It's about male friendship.
Yes.
It's about working together.
Yeah, and Master and Commander is steampunk, right? Because they got like a scientist on it. Sure.
Yeah, they got those dumb outfits. I don't know. I don't know steampunk.
They, when Matron has that top hat with the gears on it.
And then they find the legless cat. You got your climax. Like, there's already stuff I talked about that I was like, maybe it doesn't work. Like, but you get your action scenes, and it's fine. A lot of people picked on the effects in this movie. And I don't know if it's just the... having advanced like 25 years. But I liked the effects in this.
Yeah.
I thought they looked fine, at least like on a small screen. I liked the steampunk machinery.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm basic. I don't know.
Well, the effects aren't great, but they aren't bad either.
They don't look horrible like in a lot of other movies with tons of CG.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't look, maybe because we've moved into the age of like AI generated art. I was like, oh, this looks quaint. This is adorable. I like this. It's like looking at old matte paintings from the 50s.
Yeah, it's like, oh, someone actually put work into this. Interesting.
And Loveless is defeated. And because this is an action movie of the 90s, the love interest departs with her husband, and our heroes ride off into the sunset on a giant mechanical spider.
Yeah, all movies in the 90s had to end that way.
Yeah, because like getting with the chick at the end, kind of gay, dude. I don't know.
It's a stupid movie, but if you're on its wavelength, then fine. I mean, I guess like I'm grading it on like the like one-shot adventure at like a role-playing convention curve, where it's like, hey, a bunch of goofy shit happened. Like, that's cool.
Well, and it's weird because like, as much as I've criticized this movie, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
Like, it was a diverting enough watch, and I don't know if it's just because my brain has been cooked by, like, just so much trash. Like, maybe this doesn't move...
Yeah, you've watched so much worse movies.
I really do. So this doesn't even move the needle for me that much on bad. It's like what I would expect of a kind of reviled blockbuster of the 90s. And it's like, you know what? Like, I'll take this over a fucking Michael Bay movie. Like...
Oh, yeah. That was the worst movie I saw in Westwood. Transformers.
Ooh, that must have been agony in a theater.
Another movie that I don't know, to my eternal befuddlement, I don't know why I didn't walk out of it. Because there's a point where I'm like, I don't give a shit what's going on. I think it might have been when John Turturro got peed on. I'm just like, why am I here? This isn't a Transformers movie.
He's done better work elsewhere.
Yeah, with the Coens, who just love that George Clooney for his comedy.
Gross.
You know what line I like from this movie?
What?
It's when they're going over the how to make a convincing fake boob. And, Artemis pops out, his little notepad and his pencil. And Wes is like, you could put a gun on that thing. And he's like, then where would I put my pencil?
That's another very Tim joke for some reason that
Yes.
I can't quite put my finger on.
Yeah, it is. It's like, don't be stupid. Like, I need my pencil at hand. What do I need a gun here for?
Me, I like good old-fashioned physical comedy, just a man, like, waving a boot knife around. Just makes me laugh and laugh.
There are nice
I'm simple,
There are nice
Tim.
visual gags in this. Like, there's that little RKO dog, like, sight gag.
Yeah, that was wild. There's a nipper in
Yeah.
this.
I don't,
Like a tiny nipper, like reacting to the. We didn't even mention Ted Levine.
right, yeah. He's in this.
Yeah, Buffalo Bill is in this as a Confederate baddie.
Yeah. Just doing, like, a mirror universe Sam Elliott.
At no point does he sell beef, but I get what you're
Right,
saying
yeah.
exactly.
Oh, he's got a beef. He's got a beef with the North. The War of Northern Aggression.
I have beef with this movie.
Yes.
Well, I don't think this is streaming currently, but you know what? It'll turn up on Tubi. This is exactly
Everything
the kind of
does
shit that appears
eventually.
on Tubi periodically.
Yep.
Tim, is there anything else? I'll let you have the last word. Pat Buchanan, you have the last word. Nothing about the SS, please.
well,
But what do you have anything final you would like to say about Wild Wild West?
I have a rap I could use to explain my feelings.
Sick, you got bars? That's awesome.
Yeah, I've just been writing beats in my bedroom every day. I would play this movie as a role-playing game and be like, yeah, this has been great.
You know what? Any of you out there who subscribe at the $5 level, come to the Discord. We have a channel specifically for talking about gaming. Come pitch your ideas for a Wild Wild West movie-themed game to Tim. I think he'll enjoy it. And you'll have a nice time, too.
Yeah. And go read Nacetta Vander's Wikipedia entry. It's all up to date. Including the work that she's done in 2024. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, you can show your support by going to patreon.com/haveyouseenthis and make a pledge at the $2 or $5 tier. $5 a month gets the latest episode before everyone else, plus access to our Discord where we're always arguing about movies. If you'd like to give us a tip, our Ko-Fi link is in the show notes.
There's implied penis at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah, well, you want a good penis up front.
When you put a black actor in a movie, you have to put in a scene where some white people marvel at his dick.
Yes.
It's law.